Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama is campaigning in Florida again today and reaching out to an influential group, Cuban American voters. John Zarella joins us live from Miami. Good to see you, John. What can we expect today?
Well, Namwa, it certainly is interesting because Barack Obama is, for the most part, going into the lion's den today. We're not sure what kind of a response he's going to get. A luncheon speech here before the Cuban American National Foundation that historically has been staunchly Republican, hugely influential lobbying group in Washington, D.C., and very, very staunchly anti-Castro, anti-Cuban government. But Obama's here because times may be changing.
If you limit outside influence, that's how you can solve.
You are looking at a rare individual. Giancarlo Sopo is a Cuban American who publicly supports a Democrat for president.
My family is on board with Barack Obama.
For decades, Cuban Americans have been powerful allies of the Republican Party and its candidates, staunchly backing a no-compromise stand against Cuba. Sopo represents a growing trend. Young Cuban Americans weary of what they say are Republican promises not delivered.
And in reality, all they give to Cuban Americans is lip service. And I think Cuban Americans of my generation, Cuban Americans of previous generations, are tired of the lip service.
Many in this community would like what Senator Obama is promising, loosening travel restrictions on visiting relatives in Cuba and making it easier to send money to their families. But where Obama loses Cuban American voters is by proclaiming his willingness to meet with Raul Castro. In Miami, something akin to heresy.
And I think the fact that Obama now walks in and says, oh, we can sit down and talk to Raul Castro because it hasn't worked the other way, it's absurd.
Ninosca Perez Castellon hosts a Spanish-language radio program.
Radio Mambí está en el aire.
Perez says the vast majority of Cuban Americans will vote for John McCain and against change.
The fact that he's firm on Cuba, that he is not willing to lift those sanctions, is going to help him in South Florida.
Historically, at least 70% of Cuban Americans turn out to vote. Large turnout that has given this small immigrant community plenty of influence and plenty of important visitors. Now, it's often been said that on bread and butter issues when it comes to the economy, when it comes to health care, education, Cuban Americans have always been more in line with Democratic Party principles. But when it comes to Cuba, which is the issue they have historically voted on, they are in line with the Republican Party. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Obama is received here today and if he is able to make any inroads into the Cuban American community.
So, John, Obama really taking the time today to reach out to the Cuban American community. How important is this community as a voting bloc?
Well, you know, it always has been significant because of that huge turnout, 70%. This year they say it may be 85% turnout. But over the course of the past several decades, the Cuban American majority, at one point they were 70% of the voting bloc of Hispanics in South Florida. The numbers have steadily decreased down to about 45%, while other Hispanic groups more in tune with the Democratic Party have risen. In fact, in the state of Florida, just recently, there are now more registered Democratic Hispanics than Republican Hispanics. They just made that switch. So they're not as influential as they once were, but as a voting bloc in the Miami community, they can certainly get out the vote and provide a lot of votes for John McCain. And that's something that Barack Obama has to try and at least make some inroads into that group.